So, getting the entire planet to net zero emissions by 2050, that's a goal so big, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around, right? But what if there was a map? Well, the International Energy Agency, the IEA, they actually made one. It's this incredibly detailed, super data-driven, and, let's be honest, incredibly demanding roadmap for the whole global energy sector. So let's dive in and see what it actually says. Okay, so first things first, we got to understand the problem the IEA is even trying to tackle here. And it's a big one. You've got this they're making about climate change and the hard reality that emissions just keep going up. This whole roadmap, it's all about one thing. How do we finally close that gap? And this is it. This is the report. Now, what makes this thing so important, so critical, is that it was a total first for the IEA. They had never, ever before laid out a complete A to Z path for the entire global energy sector to reach net zero. It was a massive undertaking, to say the least. And you can feel the urgency right from page one. This quote from the IEA's head, Dr. Fatih Birol, it just cuts right to the heart of the matter. He says, we have to close this gap between rhetoric and action. In other words, it's time to stop talking and start doing. We've got to move from just making promises to getting real, measurable results. And this number, wow, this is a tough one to swallow. The IEA ran the numbers, and they found that even if every single country perfectly followed through on their climate pledges, the ones already on the books, temperatures would still shoot up by about 2.1 degrees Celsius. And that just blows right past that critical 1.5-degree target we're trying to hit. So the big question is, how do we get off that 2.1-degree track and onto a 1.5-degree one? Well, the IEA roadmap is absolutely crystal clear on this. The journey to 2050, it starts right now. And it calls for a decade of action so fast, so unprecedented, that the energy world has literally never seen anything like it. Now, this might just be the single most shocking line in the whole report. Just let this sink in for a second. No new oil and gas fields, no new coal mines. For an organization like the IEA, which is, traditionally pretty conservative, to say this, it was monumental. They were basically drawing a line in the sand and saying, from this moment on, expanding fossil fuels is just, it's not compatible with a net zero future, period. And here's the really crucial part. For this first big push, we're not waiting around for some sci-fi invention to save us. Nope. It's all about the tools we already have. We're talking solar, wind, energy efficiency, and just deploying them at a speed and a scale that is, frankly, almost hard to imagine. You want a sense of that scale? Okay, check out this number. By 2030, the world needs to be adding 630 gigawatts of solar power every single year. Now, to put that into perspective, that's 4 times the record-breaking amount we installed back in 2020. 4 times! So, what does that number even look like in the real world? It's like this. Imagine building the world's largest solar park. Got it? Okay, now imagine doing that again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that, for years. That's the absolutely mind-boggling pace we're talking about here. And hey, this massive change isn't just about power plants. It's about what we drive too. The report says electric cars have to go from being about 5% of new car sales to over 60% by 2030. That's a huge 12-fold jump in less than a decade. Just incredible. Okay, so that first decade is all about massive, massive action. But, and this is a really big but, the IEA is very clear that the tech we have right now isn't enough to get us all the way to the finish line. The second half of this journey, it's going to depend on nothing short of an innovation revolution. So take a look at this chart for 2030. It's pretty telling, right? It shows that pretty much all the emissions cuts we need in this decade, they come from technologies we already have on the market. This is all about that huge deployment push we were just talking about. But now, let's jump ahead to 2050. And this is where things get really, really challenging. See that? Almost half of all the emissions reductions we need will have to come from technologies that are currently just prototypes or are still stuck in a lab somewhere. We basically need to invent, perfect, and scale up the answers to our toughest problems. And we need to start, like, yesterday. So where do we focus all that brainpower? The report highlights 3 huge opportunities. We need next-generation batteries for energy storage. We need to massively, and I mean massively, scale up electrolyzers to make clean hydrogen. And we need to perfect things like direct air capture. Technology that can literally suck CO2 right out of the air. All right, so let's say we do it. Let's say we pull this off, we deploy everything we have now, and we invent everything we need for later. What does the world actually look like in 2050? Well, the IEA paints a picture of a global energy system that is, honestly, you almost wouldn't recognize it. By 2050, the whole system is just dominated by renewables. We're talking 2/3 of our power coming from wind, solar, bioenergy, hydro, the whole shebang. And look at this. Solar power becomes the single biggest source of energy on the entire planet. That's a huge shift. And this comparison here really shows you the flip side of that renewables boom. The share of fossil fuels in our energy supply, it just completely collapses. It goes from around 4/5 of our energy today, all the way down to just over 1/5 by 2050. It's a complete 180-degree turn. And what that really means is that clean electricity basically becomes the new backbone of modern life. It's what's going to power our cars, heat our homes, run our factories, everything. It pretty much doubles its share of our total energy use, becoming this central pillar for the entire global economy. But look, this isn't just a story about technology, about gigawatts and pipelines. A change this big has a massive human impact. So you gotta ask, what does this all mean for people, for their jobs, for their communities, and for just basic fairness? Let's start with the good news. The IEA projects that all this investment in clean energy, it creates 14 million new jobs by 2030. And that's not even counting the millions more in related fields like manufacturing. But the report is also brutally honest about the flip side. As the fossil fuel industry shrinks, about 5 million jobs are lost. So while it's a net gain overall, it also means there's going to be some very real, very painful disruption for workers and communities in certain places. And that's exactly why the report hammers this point home. Governments can't just sit on the sidelines. They have to actively manage what's called a just transition. That means things like retraining workers, maybe locating new clean energy plants in those areas that are hit the hardest, and making sure people feel like they're a part of this change, not just that it's something happening to them. This final image really lays out the choice we're facing. That blue line, that's the net zero path we've been talking about. But that gray line, that's what happens if we fail to cooperate, if countries try to go it alone. Emissions stay dangerously high. That gap between those two lines, that's pretty much everything that's at stake. So what's the big takeaway here? With this report, the IEA has basically drawn us a map. Now, it might not be the only map, but it is a map. It shows that getting to net zero isn't a technical fantasy. It's actually possible. The path is incredibly narrow, sure, and it's super challenging, but it's there. So the ultimate question really isn't about technology or money anymore. It's about something much simpler and much harder. Do we have the collective will to walk that path together?